Hi there, welcome back to your English class. Hope you guys are following the story, The Homecoming, which is written by Rabindranath Tagore. Just a quick recap before we go on further with the story. I told you about Pathik, a little boy of 14 years old who's brought up by a single parent. He doesn't have a father, he has a brother who always bullies him, and a mother who is um, divided into her work and taking care of these two children. And most of the time, because he's the elder one, he gets all the scolding from the mother. Now, since he is a growing up child, he needs a lot of attention from his mother, but unfortunately, he does not get that. In the meantime, his uncle comes home and decides to take him to Calcutta along with him. Though Pathik is quite excited, he has all the dreams that now somebody will pay more attention to him and he'll be away from the bullying of his brother and the neglecting nature of his mother. So he decides to go away with his uncle. When he goes there, it's a totally different story because uncle is married. He has 3 sons already. They stay in a very cramped up apartment. And it's not long when he starts missing home because his auntie does not treat him well. She's always neglecting him, doesn't like him, and she makes it very, very obvious before him that he is not at all welcomed in that house. So the story goes on further and it becomes a little more serious because now the child is missing home. He wants to go back home. He is missing his mother, especially because whatever was the situation there, at least by the end of the day, the mother would be there for him. But over here, there's no attention of the auntie or no attention of the uncle, and the brothers, his cousin brothers, also do not treat him well. Plus, the city life is not at all like the village life. His life is too crammed up. There is no space to play, no time to go out, and whenever he gets little attention from his auntie, he is very very happy, बहुत खुश हो जाता है. लेकिन वो खुशी में कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ कर ही देता है, so he ends up getting scolding. So let's see further what happens in the story. There was no more backward boy in the whole school than Pathik. He gaped and remained silent when the teacher asked him a question, and like an overladen ass, patiently suffered all the blows that came down on his back. When other boys were out at play, he stood wistfully by the window and gazed at the roofs of the distant houses. And if by chance he espied children playing on the open terrace of any roof, his heart would ache with longing. One day, he summoned up all his courage and asked his uncle, "Uncle, when can I go home?" His uncle answered, "Wait till the holidays come." But the holidays would not come till November, and there was a long time still to wait. Now, Pathik is fretting for his family. Okay, now his heart is like he wants to go there. The saddest thing about it is that he's not able to express that to anybody. So he started going to school. In the school also, it was a same affair. He had not studied very well in the village, so he was a very weak child in the school. He wouldn't understand anything. He wouldn't know the answers. And when he wouldn't answer, the teachers used to beat him. And quietly he would just stand there and take all the beating from the teachers. The Children also didn't pay much attention to him, क्योंकि वो उतना अच्छा पढ़ने लिखने में नहीं था और हमेशा डांट खाता रहता था, तो बच्चे भी उसको ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं देते थे. And he started feeling very neglected, he started feeling very lonely. जब इंटरवल के टाइम पे भी जब बच्चे खेलने वगैरह जाते थे, so he would just stand there and just look at them. He wouldn't go and play with them, or he would just stand there, peep outside the window and see the other houses जिसकी छत दिखती थी स्कूल की खिड़की से. और कभी अगर उसको उन छतों पर कोई बच्चे दिख जाते थे तो उसका मन बहुत ज़्यादा करता था कि वो उनके साथ जाके खेले. Unfortunately, he was not getting what he wanted. Means जिस फीलिंग को लेकर वो शहर आया था, he came here with a feeling that he would be given a lot of attention, or his life will be different from that of the village. विलेज में जैसे उसकी मम्मी उसको डांटती रहती थी, यहाँ पे भी उसको डांट ही पिटती रहती है. स्कूल में भी, घर में भी मामी से डांट पिटती है, स्कूल में टीचर लोग से डांट पिटती है. उल्टा वो और ज़्यादा अकेला हो गया सिटी में आके. ही बिकेम मोर लोनली इन द सिटी, एंड दैट स्टार्टेड he started hitting his heart and mind. And he one day asks his uncle कि अंकल व्हेन विल आई गो होम, कब मैं घर जाऊंगा. एंड अंकल से जब छुट्टी आएगी तब. बट छुट्टी वॉज अ लॉन्ग वे टू गो. छुट्टी वॉज हॉलीडेज वर इन नवंबर एंड still there was a lot of time for him to go back. So he started feeling desperate or very lonely, very sad, and inside his heart he just longed to go home, be with his mother, be with his brother, whatever the situation was. He never wanted to stay back in the city. One day, Pathik lost his notebook. Even with the help of books, he had found it very difficult indeed to prepare his lessons. Now it was impossible. Day after day, the teacher would cane him unmercifully. His condition became so abjectly miserable that even his cousins were ashamed to own him. They began to jeer and insult him more than the other boys. He went to his aunt at last and told her that he had lost his book. His aunt pursed her lips in contempt and said, "You great clumsy country lout, how can I afford with all my family to buy you new books 5 times a month?" That night, on his way back from school, Pathik had a bad headache with a fit of shivering. He felt he was going to have an attack of malarial fever. His one great fear was that he would be a nuisance to his aunt. Right? So one day what happens that Pathik was doing his work and he lost his book. First of all, it was very difficult for him to study alone without any help. Somehow he completed his work, but in the bargain he lost the book. When he went to school, he got a lot of caning. Caning is जो डंडी से मार पिटती थी, बैंत से, संटी बोलते थे उसको पुराने ज़माने में, उससे मार पिटती थी, उसको केनिंग कहा जाता था. सो एक बैम्बू स्टिक होती थी पतली सी. इट वुड बी वेरी हार्ड ऑन योर whoever used to get the beating. So anyways, he got a lot of beating from the teacher, and his days in the school started becoming worse because and more than the boys in the school, his own cousin brothers started teasing him, started hitting him, and they would be insulted. They never even wanted to be associated with him. So he started feeling very bad, and somehow he gathered the courage to tell his auntie that he had lost his book. So instead of being a little calm and polite or caring with him, आंटी ने भी ज़ोर से चिल्ला दिया कि तुम कितने बेकार लड़के हो, एंड तुम यहाँ एक तो यहाँ आके रह रहे हो, ऊपर से तुम एक्सपेक्ट करते हो कि मैं तुमको महीने में 5-5 6-6 बारी बुक्स दिलाऊं, तो मेरे से नहीं हो सकता है। अब यही सब चीज़ें उसके दिमाग में चल रही हैं। ओके, सो ऑलरेडी ही इज़ मिसिंग होम, he is not liking the atmosphere at all, he is not getting that love in the school, nor he is getting that love in the home. So he is, heart of hearts, he just doesn't want to stay there. And that night when he was coming back from school, he thought in his mind that now I think he understood that he is not feeling well because his body was shivering, he had a slight temperature, his head was paining so badly, and but there was a fear in his heart कि अगर अब मैं घर जाऊंगा और मेरी आंटी को पता चलेगा कि मैं बीमार हूँ, तो फिर वो चिल्लाने लगेंगी, फिर वो गुस्सा करने लगेंगी. So he thought कि he would be a nuisance to his aunt. The next morning, Pathik was nowhere to be seen. All searches in the neighborhood proved futile. The rain had been pouring in torrents all night, and those who went out in search of the boy got drenched through to the skin. At last, Vishambar had to take help from the police. At the end of the day, a police van stopped at the door before the house. It was still raining, and the streets were all flooded. 2 constables brought out Pathik in their arms and placed him before Vishambar. He was wet through, from head to foot, muddy all over, his face and his eyes flushed red with fever, and his limbs all trembling. Vishambar carried him in his arms and took him into the inner apartments. When his wife saw him, she exclaimed, "What a heap of trouble this boy has given us. Hadn't you better sent him home?" Pathik heard her words and sobbed out loud. "Uncle, I was just trying to go home, but they dragged me again back towards you." Now, when he thought that he was sick, Pathik did not go back home that day. और वो सड़कों पर ही रहा पूरी रात. बारिश भी शुरू हो गई, एंड फर्स्ट ही डिड नॉट नो, उसने सोचा कि बेहतर है कि मैं अपने घर वापस गांव में चले जाऊं. But he did not have the money, he did not know the way, he did not know how to do this. And without telling his uncle or auntie, he was out on the streets of Calcutta. Plus it was pouring, plus he was sick. So it was, means obviously at home Vishambar was worried because he did not come back, and everybody was trying to search for this boy, but unfortunately he was nowhere to be found. So at last Vishambar had to go to the police to file a missing complaint, and the next day the police brought back Pathik, and Pathik was half conscious, थोड़ी बेहोशी की हालत में था क्योंकि उसका बुखार और बढ़ चुका था, आँखें लाल हो रही थी, पूरा वो हेड टू टो ही वॉज वेट. और पुलिस ने गोद में उठा के उसको लाया और विशंबर को दे दिया. विशंबर, his uncle, was caring and loving for him. He had feelings for his nephew, so he quickly took him inside the house and he rubbed him. And बट आंटी जो थी एज़ यूजुअल वो उसमें भी कमेंट मार रही थी कि जब से आया तब से सिर्फ परेशान ही कर रहा है, क्यों नहीं उसको घर के बाहर तुम भेज देते हो, क्यों नहीं उसको तुम अपने घर भेज देते हो, लेट हिम गो टू हिज हाउस, सेंड हिम बैक. एंड एज Pathik hears this in his subconscious mind, he says that loudly. He started crying loudly. Swab matlab cry. He started crying loudly and he says that that's what I was trying to do, uncle. I was trying to go home, but these police fellows brought me back. That was so painful actually for anybody to hear. So anybody who has feelings would understand what Pathik was going through. The fever rose very high, and all that night the boy was delirious. Vishambar brought in a doctor. Pathik opened his eyes, flushed with fever, and looked up to the ceiling and said vacantly, "Uncle, have the holidays come yet? May I go home?" Vishambar wiped the tears from his own eyes and took Pathik's lean and burning hands in his own and sat by him through the night. The boy began to mutter. At last his voice became excited. "Mother," he cried, "don't beat me like that, mother. I'm telling the truth." The next day, Pathik became conscious for a short time. He turned his eyes about the room as if expecting someone to come. At last, with an air of disappointment, his head sank back on the pillow. He turned his face to the wall with a deep sigh. Right now, उस रात जब वो बेहोश हो जाता है, his temperature rose very very high. A doctor had to be called and the doctor gave him medicines. और रात भर विशंबर उसके पट्टी लगाते हैं जब बुखार तेज हो जाता है तो he was doing that for him. He was giving him cold fermentation so that his temperature comes down. And in his when you have high temperature, generally you mutter things. Okay, जब बुखार तेज हो जाता है तो आप बड़बड़ाने लगते हैं. And Pathik was only asking, "Uncle, have the holidays come? I want to go home." कभी कभी वो उसको नज़र शायद उसकी माँ भी नज़र आ रही थी तो वो अपने बेहोशी की हालत में he also says that, "Mother, don't beat me, mother. I'm telling you the truth." और जब ये सब वो सुन रहा था विशंबर, when he was hearing all this, he started to cry because he couldn't control. He also became emotional and he now understood that it was necessary for this boy to go home and it was necessary for this boy to become okay. And he could understand then that this was that Pathik was in an emotional mess and he wanted his mother right. He wanted the attention of his mother right now, especially in this situation when he was very sick. एक बार जब नेक्स्ट डे जब पथिक को होश भी आता है, so he looks towards the door of the room as if somebody was coming or as if he was expecting somebody. But जब वो देखता है कि कोई नहीं आया तो वो फिर से वो आंख बंद करके लेट जाता है. Vishambar knew his thoughts and bending down his head whispered, "Pathik, I have sent for your mother." The day went by. The doctor said in a troubled voice that the boy's condition was very critical. Pathik began to cry out, "By the mark, 3 fathoms. By the mark, 4 fathoms. By the mark." He had heard the sailor on the river steamer calling out the mark on the plumb line. Now he was himself plumbing an unfathomable sea. Later in the day, Pathik's mother burst into the room like a whirlwind and began to toss from side to side and moan and cry in a loud voice. Vishambar tried to calm her agitation, but she flung herself on the bed and cried, "Pathik, my darling, my darling." Pathik stopped his restless movements for a while. His hands ceased beating up and down. He said, "Yeah." The mother cried again, "Pathik, my darling, my darling." Pathik very slowly turned his head and without seeing anybody said, "Mother, the holidays have come." So actually what happens is that Vishambar understands that this boy is really missing the mother. So he goes down, and in his ears, though Pathik cannot hear anything because he is not conscious, ना उसको सुनाई आ रहा है ना समझ में आ रहा है, लेकिन फिर भी उसके कान में बोलता है कि I have sent a message to your mother and your mother will be here with you soon. और नेक्स्ट डे उसकी मम्मी आ जाती हैं और जैसे ही वो देखती हैं उस अपने बेटे की हालत, तो वो तुरंत से, और जो ऑब्वियसली इतने दिन के बाद देख रही हैं वो भी ऐसी हालत में, तो वो बहुत ज़्यादा रोती हैं उसको देखकर और उसको गले लगा लेती हैं. एंड ही सेज, Pathik my darling, I have come, just open your eyes and see. And Pathik just says yeah, and again she just kisses him all over and hugs him and holds him and says, Pathik, I have come, my son, I have come to take you. And the son just he was not in a position to open his eyes, so he just says, Mother, the holidays have come. And he actually dies. He doesn't stay alive. So that's the sad part of the story. शायद कोई इंग्लिश मूवी, हिंदी मूवी होती तो जग गया होता या ठीक हो गया होता, पर अनफॉर्चुनेटली ऐसा नहीं होता है. एंड द लाइन दैट सेज दैट मदर द हॉलीडेज हैव कम मीन्स दैट आई हैव कम होम. होम इज actually the arms of the mother, and in a personification it is home means heaven also. Okay, so I know it's a sad story, but I hope you liked it, and in the next video I'll be sending you the notes of the lesson. So take care, read the chapter. If you have any problems, please ask. Bye bye.